Prices are rising, but is your pay still stuck? From food to housing, Malaysians are feeling the squeeze.
The low costs are always translated to low wages for the businesses to survive. So you find that the wage increment is slowing down in comparison to the cost.
So, are we facing a cost of living crisis or a wage crisis? Find out on Decimal Point. For many Malaysians, the cost of living is a daily struggle. A 2025 consumer report revealed that 77% say that they are finding it hard to keep up with daily expenses. More than half have said that their income has not increased at all. We explore this concern, why Malaysians feel trapped as living costs keep rising. A 2025 consumer trend study revealed that 77% of Malaysians are struggling with daily expenses. Food and beverage prices have also increased by 17.5% since the year 2020. Now, this is also twice as fast as compared to the inflation rate. So what does this show in terms of the well-being of households in Malaysia?
Okay, in the first, we have to have a look at what is the definition of inflation. Now, the Department of Statistics Malaysia comes up with the headline inflation, okay, which is based on a basket of 552 goods and services. So they then compute the headline inflation rate. And of course, these rates can be adjusted by various parties that are using it. And it has been adjusted in terms of seasonal trends products like food and beverage, and of course, government subsidized product. So this is a general definition of what inflation is. Now, in reality, if you look at the man on the street, not all these products are affecting them, okay? So what they are mostly affected by are food and beverage. So that is why you find that this increment here has a great effect on the general well-being of the individual. And what this would be construed as is a perception reality gap. So what is in the macroeconomic data, okay, from the Department of Statistics, well, it does not reflect what the general well-being of the individual is at. So you'll find that there is a disparity there. And this is why you'll find that the individual feels that the food and beverage prices, when it increase, they will feel the impact of it to them at a much more greater stance in comparison to others. Okay, so that is why then the macroeconomic data does not really affect the microeconomic challenges that the individual face at the moment. And this is why it looks like the well-being is not so reflected. So we have a macroeconomic, which the figures are looking good, but at the microeconomic level, what is felt by the individual is something really different.
Between 2019 and 2024, wages in Malaysia have increased by about 7%, while food prices have increased by 17%. Now, this shows real decline in purchasing power, especially for low-income households and also new graduates. So is this a policy failure or a structural flaw?
There is a general imbalance in the policies, okay, and structural itself. So let's look at it historically. Now, in Malaysia, we have always prioritized low wages. and the business entity itself are more focused in ensuring low cost. There is generally a difficulty in us in actually ensuring that we are able to pay higher wages to the individual. So the emphasis has always been there. So this is the policy itself. Now we are going to transition into a high cost income country, but our infrastructures and all are not yet ready for these changes. So therefore our government will also have to need to look into what are the policy reforms that we can enact in order to ensure that we are able to transition into this. Because currently it is also difficult for the individual itself. They do not have enough income. All right, because the low costs are always translated to low wages as a way to actually for the businesses to survive. So you find that the wage increment is slowing down in comparison to the cost, and that is why your cost increments are always higher. So it's difficult for survival. So government reforms are actually required. Structurally, we also need to reform itself. So to answer your question, actually, both are required. And if it is not taken into consideration, there will be a general brain drain in the future that is going to be faced by our population. If we do not actually resolve this wage situation, eventually our young graduates may then look elsewhere, where they will then incur another set of problems, which is the brain drain.
Despite years of economic growth, wages of many Malaysians have barely moved, especially among the working and middle class. And fresh graduates with diplomas and degrees are still earning under 3,000 ringgit a month, not enough for urban living. Based on all that you have mentioned so far, what are the reforms that we can do to fundamentally change all of this?
Okay, let's look first at the wage situation, the wage crisis, okay? And when we look at the wage crisis, okay, we are talking about low wages, all right? So what has been done is there have been reforms made on having a minimum wage, okay? So it's a progressive wage structure. Right, we already have that in 2025, which we have 1,700. Okay, but we should actually fundamentally look at how we can actually make it better, make it increase, more reforms in that. So having minimum wage is actually a good step forward. Now, the other thing that we can do is most of our wage also face competition from foreign workers. So there have been something in the pipeline of having a foreign worker levy. Well, this is a good step forward in the sense that organizations now will have to look into reasons why they bring in foreign worker. And if it is not required, then a levy would be placed on them. All right. So, but what is actually good is in the sense that then the organizations will start emphasizing on the locals instead of using foreign workers as a way of low cost, which actually deprives the local of an income. So, having said that, then that would actually ensure the wage can be increased. Now, having wage increase without productivity is also a problem. So what is the other aspect that should be looked into is to reskill our workers. Now, the foreign worker levy can actually be used to give grants for purposes of reskilling our workers. So we then have a very good eco-structure to assist our locals. Okay, so now this is one of the way, and also another way is that we can actually strengthen using labour reforms and collective bargaining, and also trade unions. Right now, our trade unions are not very strong, and so mainly workers are not able to put forth their needs, okay, to the organisation and the management itself. So these are things that to be considered. But having said that, let's look now at the food aspect of it. Now, we need to look into food sovereignty, which means one very good way for us to move forward is to actually produce this food ourselves. But we are going to do it in a very productive way. So we can use technology. Okay, there's things like smart farming, so that we can actually do two things at one go: increase our productivity and have food sovereignty. In other words, we do not need to depend on imports of food, because right now imports of food actually carries a very high degree in terms of expenditures. So this will actually help most of us, and it actually bring down the problems that we are currently facing. So these are some of the structural reforms. They are already in the pipeline, but I'm sure in time to come, hopefully it is initiated well, that we will be able to see some changes in our economy.
In 2024, Malaysia piloted its progressive wage policy, which is modelled after Singapore's progressive wage policy. The difference is that Singapore's model is mandatory as compared to Malaysia's being voluntary. Is this effort enough to solve the labour problem?
Having said that, we do have a lot of challenges, and much of what we have has been in existence for many, many years. So to overcome these problems, there are various reforms. And one of it is, of course, the progressive wage. And if you look at this, Singapore do have a very mandatory model, but ours is voluntary. I think having a more mandatory form would be able to alleviate some of our problems. Some of these problems cannot be resolved overnight. Okay, so it needs intervention, and having mandatory do help, okay, in terms of elevating the wage crisis that we have now. So this is something we must look at moving forward. Now, the risk here, if we do not actually resolve this wage situation, you'll find that eventually our young graduates and all those, in fact, even the existing population may then look elsewhere, where they will then incur another set of problems, which is the brain drain. Okay, and we'll be losing our talents to other countries, which perhaps are more willing to pay the wage and the productivity that comes along with it. So we should be leveraging on this productivity that we have already on set in our population.
So there seems to be a problem that's happening in the classroom. So what can policymakers, educators as well as employers do differently to address this problem?
So you're saying that there is a 32.4% misalignment difference, yeah, in the wages or what the students are supposed to get, right? So maybe this is because there is a passive consumption, right? So we deliver lecture and students just listen, and there is no active application in the classroom. So in order to do this, right, we need to expand the education or delivery of within the classroom itself beyond the normal lectures, beyond the normal tutorial session. Okay, during the lecture, we need to ask opinions, yeah, to the students, yeah. What do they think? What have they studied today? And you have to make it more interesting, more interactive. Right. So the reason of doing this, right, it forces the students to think about what they have learned throughout the day or what they have just learned, and to synthesize the information rather than memorizing everything. So I love to pose questions even during the lecture, because I want to see the amount of concentration they have during the lecture. After 30 minutes, I can tell you nobody, none of the students, right, can recall back. Very active interaction forces the student to synthesize the information, have more critical thinking. Yeah? Once the ratio changes, where you take in more foreign workers, the levy will be higher exponentially.
Some economists argue that labour in Malaysia is undervalued due to heavy reliance on cheaper foreign workers. With the government pushing to raise the ceiling, can Malaysia break out from wage stagnation without addressing labour issues?
Role play and simulation, you can have a group of students, can be even engineering students, right? What happens if the budget cut? What can you do for your project? Maybe you learn project management, right? What can you do? And then they can have a negotiation session. You can divide into groups and they can have negotiation sessions. So it forces them to be solution driven, okay? Not just memorizing the exam question and answer. Thirdly, I've done debates, right? Parliamentary debates. During my public sector accounting modules. So this is focusing on what government policies, but I conducted the parliamentary session in English, right? And students are forced to give a more mature answer. And somebody will go and oppose, right? Oppose and pose another question. How you go about this policy and what are you doing about the policy? Impromptu. Of course, they were under pressure to give solutions. So this exercise improved their, command of English, ability to explain, in the public, okay, and more confident. And it shifted their mindset from the degree level, entry level kind of mindset, executive level, to a more management authority level. I think that is very important to employer to notice that these students are a different set of students. They are able to express themselves, to find solution, right? Able to give suggestion in order to improve the organization's maybe processes in the future. And fourthly, last week I've done a competition, sustainability reporting competition, sponsored by CPA Australia, on my year 1 Sem 3 students. So, and Gamuda Berhad, Miss Ong Jilian was one of the judges, and Mr. Gabriel Teo from a audit firm were impressed with our students, who competed in the competition, because they thought that year 1 students, couldn't express or communicate that well, and more pressure, there was pressure, and they managed to overcome their fear of communication. So by using the competition-based assignments, right, forces the student, right, to meet the KPI of the companies, right? They are more KPI driven, So whether they are winner or they are finalists, so they will not put a bare minimum in their assignment. So if you're doing assignment, right, I can chat GPT and fulfill the assignment requirement and rephrase the assignment, right, using AI paraphrase tools. But competition, you can't do that. Also, we have like integrated case study also, whereby they solve problems for Telecom Malaysia. They present their solution base for the companies. But it's not enough that the university is doing something about the classroom delivery or the assignment, right? A more proactive, interactive approach. The employer needs to employ them based on skill sets, right? Upskilling, it's a process. From time to time, you need to send them for training, right? You can't stop that. And policymakers like the government, they maybe give tax breaks, to the companies who put their staff in the university as a fellow. So this will encourage employer-academia collaborations. Multi-tier levy system, it is a more phased and focused or gradual rather than a sudden hike in levy. So if the company's ratio of foreign worker against local workers, right, is low, then they will be at the lower tier, right? Once the ratio changes into a higher, where you take in more foreign workers, the levy will be higher exponentially. So this allow the company to recalibrate the ratio of foreign workers and local workers. Secondly, if we look at the plantation and agriculture sector, I mean, they can't use AI or get automated quickly enough, right, to adjust to the levy system. We have to give them some time to adjust, to move on to automation. Manufacturing side, okay, right, they can resort to automation. The first part is the gradual ladder approach, and the second one is the sector-specific timeliness, within the comparing to the agriculture, plantation sector to the manufacturing sector. There's another approach, the carrot and stick approach. Okay, the levy that the government collected, right, can be transformed into grants. Okay, they can offer it as grants, and government should offer low interest rates loans, for companies to purchase automation, AI automated technology, so that they can use that technology to maintain their productivity and meet up their production expectations.
The housing prices in prime urban areas exceed more than 500,000 ringgit. Together with the rising cost of food, have forced many middle-income civil servants earning between 4,000 to 7,000 ringgit monthly into debt. Now, this debt is used to either pay up their car loan or their house loan instead of investing for the future. So how can Malaysia help households from borrowing just to survive, but move into investing for the future or building wealth for the future?
I think I have to disagree that there are no affordable houses. I think Perbadanan Prima, you can go on the website, they have houses ranging from 322,000 plus to, I think the highest is 390, the Sky Awani residence, and there are still available units. They also have the Brickfields residence. I think that one is sold out, but there also Jalan Jubilee and a few other residents coming up in Kuala Lumpur itself. We also have in the Selangor side is the Rumah Selangorku, which is basically definitely below 400,000. Nevertheless, let's look at the mathematical equation for the government servant, a civil servant. So let's say you are earning around RM 5,500, okay, and then you spend 1,000 ringgit on your car loan, okay, and then 2,000 ringgit on food and 2,000 ringgit on your rental, your house. So you don't have any savings, right? Now, let's say you're using the public transportation. You spend on 500 ringgit for transportation to go to work or, to run your errands. And you have 1,800 ringgit to spend for your one house, which is at 380,000 mortgage. And then you spend 500 on expenses. So maybe you can have, I think, 1,200 savings on home equity, right? So it's not how much you spend, it's how much you can save, building the asset. Secondly, there are also the public sector house financing board. So they are giving loans whereby civil servants are paying lower installments in the early of their career, early years of their career, and higher installments at the later years of their career because they take into consideration the yearly increment. So I think that would work for the public sector. Okay, another point that I would like to add is the subsidy reform, Budi 95. Okay, so because now government make it compulsory, right? You have to go to the petrol station and verify your MyCard. And this has saved the government some money in leakages, 2 billion plus to up to 4 billion leakages concerning the misuse, right, of the subsidy, of Budi 95. Okay, so using this money, right, that government save, this 2 to 4 billion ringgit Malaysia, you shift the money and put it into STR and SARA. The graduates going into the public sector, they have higher skill set. Again, they can resort into high order thinking jobs.
We've looked at how rising costs and stagnant wages are affecting Malaysians and what can be done about it. Malaysia projected to achieve high income status by 2030. But does that mean that incomes will also increase for most people? We'll explore more on why Malaysia has been struggling to break out of the middle income trap for 30 years. See you next time on Decimal Point.